your soul. Ancient mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient mother, I taste your tears.
Good morning. My name is Christy Magnuski, and I serve on the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. Happy Passover, happy Easter, happy spring. Thank you for joining us today, in person and online. It is wonderful to be together. Weather permitting, we will continue to offer in-person outdoor services on the first and third Sundays of April and May. All services will also be live streamed. If weather is inclement, we will live stream only. We will follow all public health protocols to keep everyone safe. Please bring a chair, wear a mask, and social distance. This is a wonderful way to celebrate the arrival of spring. Thank you to everyone who has worked so hard to make this possible. Allow me to share a few announcements in the life of our church. We enjoyed a presentation on the history of the Southside neighborhood this February by the Honorable Brenda Lee Price. In her presentation, she mentioned the sale of calendars to benefit the Southside Heritage and Preservation Committee. Our own Ruth Stanton has these for sale when we gather in person. The cost is $25. Please buy one to support the vital work of preserving the rich history of the neighborhood of which we are privileged to be a part. This spring, we are sharing a workshop entitled Don't Fear the Reaper, an Exploration of Modern Death. Presented by Gary Snipes and Lisa Mowry, this presentation provides clear and simple recommendations to realize a good death when our time has come. This workshop will take place Wednesdays from 12 to 1:15 via Zoom until April 21st. Our annual UUCS auction will be held on Sunday, April 18th, outdoors on the back lawn right after our in-person outside Sunday morning service that day. Mark your calendars and see the happenings for more details. Our church retreat at the mountain is scheduled for October 29th to October 31st, 2021. If we are far enough along in the pandemic with vaccination and immunity, this retreat is planned to take place. Please see the flyer at the back of this Sunday's order of service for details. Come for the whole weekend or for a fun-filled Saturday day trip to our intergenerational church retreat. Our theme is beloved community, and we will spend our time relaxing, hiking, crafting, playing games, making music, and connecting more deeply with one another. After over a year of quarantine and being apart, this retreat seems more needed than ever. Partial scholarships are available to help with the cost. Please see Scott or Sybil for a confidential conversation to request scholarship support. What an amazing congregation this is. Especially in times like these, we need each other. Thank you for being a congregation of care. And now, let me introduce our Director of Religious Education, Sybil Argentar, to tell us about our Easter egg hunt today.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here and to see everybody. So this is going to be a little different. We're going to do our best to do as much of a controlled Easter egg hunt as we can. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to come back at the end of the service after everybody has had a chance to kind of gather up their chairs and everything, and I'll announce when for the kids to come up. So what we're going to do, we're going to have 3 areas for the Easter egg hunt. The first one will be over here by Hatcher House. Then we'll take everyone to the playground, and then we'll take everyone out front. And what we're going to do is ask you, which I know you all are used to by now, lining up about 6 feet apart. Siblings can stand together. That's okay. And we'll call you up 2 at a time at each of the areas, and each time that you go out, you can get 4 to 6 eggs at a time from each of the spots. Okay, if we find we have some left, then we'll go through again. But once you have your turn, you'll go to the end of that line, and then when the front of the line is is when we're done with that line, we'll go on to the next area together. And it'll be me and Al and Pate Randall that'll be helping everybody with the Easter egg hunt. So, yeah, so it should be fun. The main thing is to be socially distanced as we're waiting in line. Everybody needs to wear a mask. And if you don't have your own little container, then I have some extra bags. Unlike normal years where we would recycle our plastic eggs and use them again, we're not going to do that this year. So whatever you find, you just take everything with you today, okay? All right. We'll see you guys in a little bit.
Good morning. Today is the last day of Passover. Tonight, Passover concludes. And today is Easter. And as we can all feel, today is the fullness of spring. I want to ask us first to just stop and enjoy the beauty of this day. I think of all kinds of funny names for this church, wonderful names and funny names. We're just the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. But sometimes I think of this as the sacred grove UU, because we are encircled by pecan trees here, and trees that have been cultivated by people before us for decades. It feels to me like a sacred grove, and never more than on a day like today. Stop and feel the beauty of this day. Just feel it. And if you're like me, even the strange blessing of wearing a mask on a day like today so that the pollen doesn't interfere with the beauty. Strange blessings. You know, the story of Passover is a story of liberation. Liberation out of enslavement into freedom. Liberation out of brokenness into a whole people. The formation of a people into a nation. We could use a story like that in our country right now. And the story of Easter is the story that love doesn't die, that love is stronger than death, that it continues on. And too many of us know, even pointedly today, the grief that death brings, and that love is still stronger. And the story of spring is that we are part of the fullness of the world beyond anything we can measure and understand. That every year, absent of anything that we do, absent of any effort that we make, that we are swept back up into this beauty and this fullness, this fecundity, this wonderful world that gives us life, of which we are a part. You know, for all of us, these stories are rich and difficult. We each come from many places. And the fact that we're here probably means that we are outside of wherever we came from, for almost every one of us. We are a multi-religious congregation. We don't believe the same things. We don't think the same things. We hear these stories and we know them, but sometimes they hurt. Sometimes they've been a source of exclusion. Even today when we Zoom with our families or have meals with people that we love, they may be used that way against us. But let me show you what we do with these stories. Not what other people say we should do, but what we do. Today is the last day of Passover. Passover is a story of liberation, of a people coming out of enslavement into community, into a nation. People who come out of brokenness to be a blessing to the world. That's the story of Passover. And this month, for our Share the Plate, when we give our offering, we are going to share the plate on behalf of an act of liberation, out of enslavement into wholeness and community. All this month, we're going to share the plate on behalf of the National Mother's Day Bailout. The National Mother's Day Bailout is a movement to help mothers who have been incarcerated and are held in jail, held in prison, just because they cannot meet their bond. Can you imagine what it does to a community when a mother is taken out of her family, sometimes for some petty cause, some small infraction, if she even did it at all, and is withheld from her family and her community just because she can't meet bail? Cash bail is a form of imprisonment, of breaking families and breaking communities. And you can look at our border, you can look at our history, you can look at our own nation's history of enslavement and know we have spent a lot of time breaking families, breaking communities. The National Mother's Day Bailout is an effort by people all over the country to contribute the resources to get mothers out of jail who are being held there just because they can't meet their bond, just because they can't meet bail. Especially mothers who are black, especially mothers of color, especially mothers who are poor, who are disproportionately targeted with these small infractions and disproportionately withheld from their families and their communities because they can't meet bail. Now, in this congregation, you can believe anything. You can think anything you want about the story of Passover. That's all allowed. In fact, it's encouraged. And across all of that difference of belief, all those differences of ideas and backgrounds and views, all of those places from which we come, what we do is gather not to share belief, but to live the meaning of the story. Not to agree, but to act. Today celebrates the end of the Festival of Liberation for those of us that are Jewish, for our Jewish siblings. And as a congregation in solidarity with our Jewish siblings, and in solidarity with our communities of color, especially our black community in our country, in an effort to free us all from the patterns of enslavement and brokenness, to build a new community, to build a new people, to build a new nation. We will join with people all over this nation to free mothers in bondage. That is who we are when we gather on a day like today. Feel the blessing of the spring.
Happy Easter. Good morning. I'm now going to read an excerpt by Galway Kinnell from St. Francis and the Sow. The bud stands for all things, even for those things that don't flower. For everything flowers from within of self-blessing. Though sometimes it is necessary to reteach a thing its loveliness, to put a hand on its brow of the flower and retell it in words and in touch, it is lovely, until it flowers again from within of self-blessing. As St. Francis put his hand on the creased forehead of the sow and told her in words and in touch, blessings of earth on the sow. And the sow began remembering all down her thick length, from the earthen snout all the way through the fodder and slops to the spiritual curl of her tail. From the hard spininess spiked out from the spine, down through the great broken heart, to the sheer blue milken dreaminess spurting and shuddering, from the 14 teats into the 14 mouths, sucking and blowing beneath them the long, perfect loveliness of Sal.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak. Her sap doth run in my veins. Boundless my soul, like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. Where the stars, where the stars, where the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weavings of time without end. My sight as deep as the sea. Beating my heart sounds the measures of old, that of love's eternity. That of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
Our church does not follow a creed. Instead, we follow a covenant, a promise we created together as a congregation, and a promise that we renew each week with one another. It is not a promise made lightly. It is a promise we hold dear to our hearts as we allow it to guide us as a community and as individuals. It's printed in your order of service, so please join me as we read these words and renew our commitment to these principles. We are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. And we're about to reach the time that we will journey to our very sacred rippling bowl that is lovingly cared for by Stacy Jackson. It's so nice to see it in person again. where we will place a stone or a shell in the water to symbolically give our joys and concerns over to the care of our entire community, and to remember that we are held in strong bonds of love and support. And if you are joining us virtually, please use your intention and your imagination to share in the bowl as well. And know that we also hold you in all of your joy and all of your pain in our hearts. And let this ritual remind you that we are never truly alone, that we are surrounded by care, warmth, and love in this beautiful place. And as we journey to the rippling bowl, you'll pass by and see there's a basket on the table. If you're joining us virtually, you can go to the website, but this is where we share our gifts. We are a living, breathing community, and through our gifts, we support this community so it can thrive and it can grow and it can support all of us in all things and at all times. So if you would now please make your way to the bowl and the basket. Thank you.
Earlier this week, I had the privilege of participating in a Zoom call with the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. The call was full of great information, sharing priorities and some things that this administration is already doing. But the best part was that President Joe Biden joined the call. Hearing him speak was such a breath of fresh air. While I know he is not the perfect president, listening to him confirmed that he cares deeply for all Americans and that his faith deeply impacts how he moves and guides him in his work. As he began talking about the role that faith leaders and faith communities have in ending the pandemic, I was so proud of this congregation. We are already doing these things and have been doing them for a year. We care deeply for one another, and it shows. From the funds raised for the Latinx community to the thousands of masks that the mask team made and distributed. From keeping one another safe, leading by example by holding virtual Sunday services and meetings, and now some outside socially distant services, advocating for science-based public health protocols at our church, and sharing of information regarding COVID testing and vaccine availability. We have been doing the things that President Biden is requesting of faith communities doing now, and we've been doing it for a year. This congregation is deeply gifted in sharing loving kindness to others, and I am so, so proud. As we did weekly through the month of January, and have continued on the first Sunday of each month since, let us join together in this meta loving kindness meditation. We begin by expressing love for ourselves. May you be free of suffering. May you be at peace. May you know the joy of your own true nature. May you be healed. May you be a source of healing for all others. May you know love. And now we express love for those for whom we care. May you be free of suffering. May you be at peace. May you know the joy of your own true nature. May you be healed. May you be a source of healing for all others. May you know love. And now we express love for those who we find difficult in small and in large ways. May you be free of suffering. May you be at peace. May you know the joy of your own true nature. May you be healed. May you be a source of healing for all others. May you know love. And finally, we express love for all beings. May you be free of suffering. May you be at peace. May you know the joy of your own true nature. May you be healed. May you be a source of healing for all others. May you know love.
It's a mark of the year that we've lived that meditation was printed in the bulletin so you could read along but not out loud. But you have read out loud anyway. And it's just wonderful to hear all your voices in unison. We haven't heard that for a year. It's like a new hymn. To hear you all read it out loud, it's like hearing you sing. Thank you for breaking the rules in all the right ways. And for always never doing the right thing. Thank you so much. It's the most wonderful group of rule breakers that ever worked together. Join with me in silence. It's our silence, but not the bird's silence, so just enjoy it. Whole ecology of being. What is the blessing that you long to share? Here in the beauty of this sacred grove, with the birds singing all around us, they've been singing since before daybreak this morning. And the beautiful combined energy of all of us here together, in person and across wires in the virtual sphere as well. And all of this interconnectedness and beauty. Think on your life. And feel in your heart. What is the blessing that you long to share? This winter, I started getting text messages from some notorious members of this congregation. They started sending me pictures of other sacred buildings, other sacred sites around the world that were housing clinics, COVID-19 testing clinics, or even serving as auxiliary hospitals in places where hospitals were so overrun that more space was needed. Pictures of cathedrals in England and other sacred buildings around the world that were serving medical professionals as support. And the question, you can anticipate what it was already, is I'd get these beautiful pictures, very moving pictures, and the question was, could we do this too? Could UUCS do this too? And of course, my mind immediately raced to all kinds of regulations and logistics and board approvals and all the things that would have to happen in order for that to take place. All the good reasons to say, no, that can't happen here. And mostly I just acted too busy to answer the texts. But they kept coming. Just a handful of folks, but more than one. In fact, speaking of the divine feminine, 3 women in our congregation who just kept persisting, sending me these messages, sometimes each of them sending it, sometimes all of them through one of them, working me, right? Could we do this? It's funny to think back a year Some of you will remember that just a little over a year ago, when we were still meeting inside, when we were just barely hearing about things happening in China, halfway across the world, we hadn't even registered what was happening in Washington State, or that the virus was already on the East Coast and none of us knew it. All the way back then, seems like more than a year ago, a lifetime ago, we talked about immigration and whether our sanctuary could be a sanctuary, whether our church could be a sanctuary for people who were being hunted in our country, hunted by ICE, people who were being pursued because they had come to our country by our economic invitation. We need cheap labor, please come. A country extends that hand. But they were being scapegoated and shut out by the political hand of our country. We want you, but we use you. You're invited, and we shut you out. It's a very confusing message that we send, very unjust, very dehumanizing. But people need resources for their families, and so they come. And thank goodness, because our economy would collapse without them. We would not eat without these people. But just a little over a year ago, we asked ourselves that question. Could our church, could our sanctuary be a sanctuary for people on whom we all depend, but whom we scapegoat? And I remember the surge of excitement around just that question, a question with lots of caveats, board approvals and regulations and laws, and what risk we'd be willing to run. But a question that we held in seriousness nonetheless. And then the pandemic hit. And the idea of any of us being in the building was stopped. Certainly not strangers in a strange land. But in the beginning days of the pandemic, 3 women, speaking of the divine feminine, 3 other women reached out to us, 3 leaders of Allianz of Spartanburg, formerly the Hispanic Alliance, 3 women who are advocates for the Latinx community in Spartanburg County. They reached out to us and they said, these are our siblings, these immigrant laborers, these people on whom we all depend. And not only are they being scapegoated in an election year, not only are they being targeted, but they are not going to receive any assistance from our federal government during this pandemic. They're losing jobs, they're becoming sick with the virus, they're losing work, they have families to support. Do you think congregations could do anything to support them, to care for them? And we said yes. Yes, we think congregations could. In fact, we think this congregation could. And so unbelievably, just over a year ago, in this month, we started. Let's put our minds with whoever is dealing with the situation for just a second while they pass. Let's send them loving kindness. In this very month, we said yes. We could do that. And this congregation, in 2 months' time, April and May last year, exactly a year ago, raised over $20,000 to provide direct assistance to Latinx immigrants in Spartanburg County. Unbelievable. We don't usually raise that much money for Share the Plate in an entire year. Unreal what we did. And then when other people heard about what we were doing, they wanted to contribute. We had politicians who have public positions that are anti-immigrant who gave to the fund. That's what happened here last year. That's real. I'm not joking. And then foundations around the state began to ask, would we perhaps be able to scale up what we were doing in Spartanburg County and make it statewide, because they had funds they'd like to give us to do that. And so with the leadership of the social justice team, and in partnership with these 3 women and other members of the Latinx community in Spartanburg County, we formed a coalition. Our board approved it. We moved forward with a statewide coalition that could apply for funds across the state and distribute aid to Latinx immigrant families all across the state all year round for food, for utilities, to keep the lights on, to keep water running, to keep shelter over people's heads. Even though there was a moratorium on evictions, landlords still were going after people. and to try to provide relief so that people weren't accumulating debt if they weren't able to pay for their rent or their mortgage, to try to provide for a more livable world. Every week, week after week, Alice and I and Miga, our accountant, would meet with members of this coalition across the state to manage and distribute those funds on behalf of this congregation and all of the partners involved, immigration advocate partners all across the state. And then when we concluded those grants this January, the same foundations asked if we would apply again and for more. Those applications are pending now. We'll see what happens. But as of today, through this congregation's willingness to say yes exactly a year ago, when we couldn't provide sanctuary here, our willingness to break out of our walls and provide support out there, we have provided more than $150,000 of direct assistance to Latinx immigrants in more than 30 counties across our state. We're talking about thousands of individuals who've been helped because we said yes. We were asked to help 3 women with a longing in their hearts to bless these people on whom we all depend, but who are so easily scapegoated and marginalized, so recklessly targeted for political benefit, for political gain. The longing in their hearts to bless those fellow members of our community and our willingness to join in that. And a year later, this is what we have done. So, just a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, Alice and Miga and I were on that call again. And the conversation went to vaccines. Who is getting vaccinated? The difficulty of getting vaccinated. The challenge of helping people know that the vaccines are safe. I know that not everyone in this congregation will be vaccinated, and this isn't meant to be a moment of shame, okay? You can let that go. That's not what this is about, right? Everybody has their reasons for what they do, and we're here to support each other as a community. But conversations about how to distribute the vaccine and how to help folks know that the vaccine is safe, and then to get it to them, particularly for communities of color, particularly for immigrant communities that would be afraid to come to clinics for fear that they might be targeted there, as happens in other cases. How do you do that? How do you do that? And in the midst of that, forgive me if I mischaracterize this, Alice, but in the midst of that, from the yearning of her heart to bless, Alice said, what could we do to help? What could we do to help? And the response was immediate. It was immediate. Our partners in this community said, we've just been given an allocation of 90 vaccines. But the place from which we're based can't accommodate a clinic. Could your church be a vaccination clinic? And on Tuesday, 90 members of the Latinx immigrant community in Spartanburg County are going to come through the doors that we came through today and are going to circumambulate our sanctuary in 4 stations to be vaccinated in the heart of our church. A year ago, we asked, could we be a sanctuary? From the yearning of our hearts. And Tuesday, we are going to do it. Now, all of those things that I thought of back in the winter when I was getting those texts to be impediments and reasons to say no, they all got knocked down before I could say no. The board said yes before I could say no. DHEC said yes before I could say no. Everybody said yes before I could say no. All the made-up reasons to obstruct our doing good. All the cautions and concerns, gone. You want to be a blessing? Reach out your hand and you can bless. You can bless. In preparation for this clinic, because it has to be well managed, it has to be well done, it has to be well organized, right? It has to work, especially for these folks, so they know that they're safe and welcome. It has to be done right. And we're in a pandemic, it has to be safe. So, with some of that notorious trio who were texting me in the wintertime, and a few other folks as well, I met in our sanctuary with DHEC. And we looked at the space to talk about this one clinic. Would it work? And the answer was immediately, yes, this will work. This will work. And we said, okay, great. And DHEC looked at us. And we looked at DHEC. And at the same time we said, and just in case there might be another instance in which you would need a place. And they said, what about the next Tuesday? So in 2 weeks' time, on April 13th, there's going to be a second clinic in the sanctuary of our church, especially for members of this neighborhood, people with whom we are trying to build a relationship to be neighbor, and also for members of the addiction recovery community with whom we have a special connection, with whom we have tried to make a space since last June for safe, very strictly managed, in-person recovery meetings so that people can survive this pandemic without any virus spread. And we've done it since last June in our fellowship hall with just that group, prioritizing that group. And next, in two Tuesdays, they will also be vaccinated. This is an incredible congregation. An incredible congregation that yearns to bless, that yearns to do good, that reaches out our hand. And we have partners in the Latinx community and in this neighborhood and in the addiction recovery community who know that we're sincere. They trust our hand reaching out, and they have grasped it for us to try to build a more livable world for us all. There's a wound in our world. A wound of exclusion, a wound of violence, a wound of scapegoating. We know it by so many names. Patriarchy, racism, capitalism run amok, environmental exploitation. So many ways in which people think it's okay to do violence to other people. And it's not okay. It's never okay. Over and over again, we see in our history and in the world all around us, and if we're honest with ourselves, also in our own compromised lives, none of us is free of that. All of us are part of it. This willingness to do violence. On this Sunday, the conclusion of Passover, the celebration of Easter, the beauty of spring, if we look at those stories honestly, that's what they're about. Stories of enslavement, stories of execution, stories of environmental destruction. You can come at it from whatever perspective you want, with whatever belief or philosophy, whatever background or rejection of background you want. It's all welcome here. It's all viable. And I want you to hear me say it. I love it. I love all of it. It all brings meaning, and all of it fusing together gives us meaning that no one of those traditions can give. But each of those stories, whatever we all think about them, they're all showing us the violence of our world and the possibility to offer a blessing that turns back the violence. Every one of those stories, whatever we think about them, is a story of overwhelming violence that a small group of people, so small, turns to face just with the desire and the will to bless, with little chance of succeeding. How can a little band of people in Spartanburg, South Carolina stand up to an overwhelming administration in the power center of the world, Washington, D.C.? How could we even think we could do that? But guess what? We did it. We did it. In our own way here, we did it, and it matters in people's lives. And over again, that's what these stories tell us. Stories of Passover, stories of Easter, stories of spring. That in the overwhelming violence in the world, when a small group of people turn to face it, and from their hearts to reach out with a blessing instead, they push back that overwhelming violence and make a world that is livable for us all. It is what people like us do. The world is broken. It is so wounded. It's evident everywhere. You can see it. And we know it in our lives. We know it in the pain that we've suffered in our lives, the exclusion and violence that we ourselves know, and we know it in the things that we've done. We don't need to act like we're outside of this. We all have perpetuated violence in our own ways. We know that. We know that. But the stories tell us again and again, and the life that we live shows us again and again. The life we have lived this year shows us again and again and again. You don't have to believe anything. I don't care if you believe anything. Just look at what we've done. When a small group of people turn with the yearning of their hearts to bless, turn to face the overwhelming violence in the world, we push it back. We transform it. And the world becomes more livable for us all. For the people that we seek to serve, and for ourselves as well. We have helped so many people across the state, and I'm so proud. It's so good. But do you feel in yourself the blessing it has been for us too? How much it has done for us? Do you feel what a blessing it is for us to be able to say, a year into this pandemic, see what we have done too? With genuine pride, the way the blessing covers us too. Just the blessing to eat the food that these people have continued to provide for us, to benefit from the services that they provide for us as the backbone of our economy. Just the blessing that we have sustained them, who do so much to sustain us. That yearning in our hearts to bless. That yearning in our hearts. That is the original blessing of our lives. And when we reach out to bless, when we push back against the systems of violence and oppression in our world, in whatever form they take, when we reach out to bless, we feel the blessing too. It comes back to us. In our own brokenness, the ways we've been co-opted and broken by the world, the way its violence has come to us, and the way we've perpetuated that violence. When we reach out to bless with healing, it heals us too. And that's what these stories are about. The people of Passover bless the world. The people of Easter surge with power to bless the world. The cosmos in springtime, it blesses us without our even asking. Look at the glory of this day. Feel the sun on your face. Hear the birds, the blessing that comes to us without even asking. The blessing of the world to heal itself. Feel the yearning of your heart. What is the blessing that you long to offer? Into patriarchy, into racism, into poverty, into psychic pain or spiritual pain or emotional pain, whatever it is, what is the blessing that you feel? You know it. the tingling in your arm? What is the healing power surging in you, longing to come out? Turn to face the overwhelming violence in the world and offer it blessing. All of the stories of this day, and most importantly, the story of our lives shows we have the power to change it all. Do it again today.
There's a wideness in your mercy, like the wideness of the sea. There's a kindness in your justice, which is more than liberty. But we make your love too narrow by false limits of our own, and we magnify your strictness with a zeal you will not own. For the love of God is broader than the measures of our minds, and the heart of the eternal is most wonderfully kind.
Okay. Okay. Once again, from St. Francis in the Sal. The bud stands for all things, even those things that don't flower. For everything flowers from within of self-blessing. Though sometimes it is necessary to reteach a thing its loveliness, to put a hand on its brow of the flower, and retell it in words and in touch, it is lovely, until it flowers again from within of self-blessing.
Okay, so I have 5 minutes after 12. So I think about 10 minutes after, what we'll do is have all of the kids come line up on this sidewalk for our first station. And there are little stars drawn in chalk on the sidewalk. Again, you can line up as siblings. Family groups can stand in the same spot. And then we'll call you up 2 at a time to go find eggs somewhere around Hatcher House over here. And I would guess I think we have about 18, somewhere 16 to 18 kids. So I would say if you get 3 or 4 eggs at each station, you're good. When you're done, you'll come to the back of the line. When everybody's gone through, we'll all go on to the next station, okay? So give everybody about 5 minutes to wrap up the service and kind of gather up their chairs, and then we'll line up along here, okay?
The violence of the world is overwhelming. But love is stronger than death. Liberation from enslavement can be won. And spring returns every year to sweep us up in its glory. We feel the blessing again today. Reach out your hand in blessing in the face of the overwhelming violence in the world. You will make this world more livable for everyone. You too.
We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength